Died.
The Disney Princess franchise was first established in the year 2000 and has since become one of the biggest franchises in Disney history. Usually, the first female characters that girls become associated with are the Disney princesses, and they leave a lasting impression on young girls as they can be seen dressed up as them at the Disney parks, on Halloween, and at your occasional Walmart. But many people today would regard Disney heroines as bad role models for young girls because they seem weak, helpless, or dependent on a man. I'm going to point at each name on this list, and I want you to say if each Disney princess here is a good or bad role model for young girls to look up to.
Yes.
Yes.
No. Yes.
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 What is she
No.
doing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. People seem to forget that Disney heroines reflect the time periods that they were released in. Snow White, Cinderella, and Aurora are described as having limited empowerment and are criticized for giving the impression that women aren't supposed to have power and are destined to just be the property of a man. But that represented the ideals of what a woman was supposed to be, and that is very outdated today, and they shouldn't be criticized just because of that. They are often defined as the first wave of feminism, and people can view Snow White and Aurora as metaphors for the time periods that they were released in. Snow White representing the 1920s to the 1930s, with her flapper hairstyle and looks, and her going through a dark period of time similar to the Depression, and Aurora representing the baby boomers who were uninterested in the politics of the time period and were devastated when they couldn't make a date. The women after Walt are seen as more independent, athletic, courageous, but are still heavily criticized as the original three. Ariel is often associated with the original three, and Jasmine, Belle, Pocahontas, and Mulan are shown to need help and still showcase heroic acts. They are often defined as the second wave of feminism. And in the modern age, Disney princesses have been praised more than ever for being far more independent than their predecessors and have been breaking the stereotypes of what a Disney princess is. Merida, for example, was the first to not sing and to not have a love interest in her film, and Moana being the first Disney princess film to not feature a romantic angle at all. So it can be assumed that a strong female heroine for young girls to look up to fights the patriarchy and makes heroic decisions. But what defines a heroic decision? The obvious answers are Belle, who sacrificed her freedom for her father's, and stands up against Gaston and the town while defending the beast. Pocahontas stands up for her beliefs and sacrifices her desire to be with John Smith, stating that she needs to be with her people and in her home. Mulan stands against the patriarchy and disguises herself as a man, taking her father's place in the army and saving China. And Rapunzel stands up for herself against her abusive mother figure after discovering the truth of her identity and self-worth. But there are striking comparisons between these princesses and the original three. For example, Snow White, Cinderella, and Rapunzel were victimized at a very young age, but remained sweet and kind to everyone they came across. Critics may view this as a bad way to deal with abuse, but if you remember, they were all raised from a young age, so they wouldn't know any other different behavior. Rapunzel is praised the most out of these three because she actually stands against her abuser. But if we remember, Cinderella at the end of her film, after she's locked in her room, screams, "You can't keep me in here," after realizing that she is worth to be loved. Aurora is similar to Pocahontas, Rapunzel, and Belle, as Aurora and Rapunzel both grew up their entire lives without knowing their real identities, and the only difference is that Aurora grew up in a loving home while Rapunzel grew up in an abusive one. And upon finding out the truth, she's understandably upset, as it is a huge change in her life. She must adjust to it, also having to marry somebody she's never met. And instead of running away from her problems, the problem that she's in, like Jasmine or Elsa do, Aurora accepts her responsibility, which is similar to Pocahontas, who sacrifices her desire to be with a man she loves, and realizes that she has to do what is right for her kingdom, and similar to Belle, who sacrifices her freedom in order to uphold the responsibilities of a princess. And people claim that Disney's leading ladies negatively affect young girls while they're growing up. However, no studies have been found proving that this is true, as children are way smarter than adults give them credit for. In the essay Long May She Reign, There was an experiment given to a young girl where a kindergartner named Zoe was playing with her Mulan doll, and she stated, "I know she's a princess, but I pretend that she's a superhero with superpowers," meaning that she already saw her as a strong character. She just used her imagination to make her even stronger. And they are often criticized for only being appreciated for their appearance and not their intellect. However, out of all the films in the franchise, only 3 of these films really care about the appearance of the princess, and that's the first 3, which reflects the time period. All the rest of the films have respected the beauty and brains of the princesses. And many girls felt that the rash decisions made by Disney princesses, such as running away or arguing, could have been avoided by simply talking about the issue and didn't see that characteristic in themselves. They often try to be a friend to everyone, being kind to people and animals, reflecting the Disney princesses' personalities. And some girls even aspire to become veterinarians or join the military because of these Disney princesses. The debate will still continue for ages and ages to come, but final thing we all need to realize when it comes to recognizing if they are strong characters for young girls to look up to is that these characters live in a fairy tale world, whereas we live in a reality, and young girls do realize that. In conclusion, Disney princesses represent the time periods that they were created in. So if their messages are a little outdated, it is not their fault. It is just the time period that they were created in. And they've all demonstrated acts of bravery. Some may be subtler than others. And young girls aren't as negatively affected as people might think by these heroines. So, with the question still remaining, what makes a strong female character? I would say it's somebody who is kind and brave and isn't afraid to stand up for themselves, but if they need to make the sacrifice worth taking, then I don't see what's so bad about looking up to someone like that.